What was most remarkable about the Chinese approach to international affairs was less its monumental formal pretensions than its underlying strategic acumen and longevity. During most of Chinese history, the numerous lesser peoples along China's long and shifting frontiers were often better armed and more mobile than the Chinese. To China's north and west were semi-nomadic peoples, the Manchus, Mongols, Uyghurs, Tibetans, and eventually the expansionist Russian Empire, whose mounted cavalry could launch raids across its extended frontiers on China's agricultural heartland with relative impunity. Retaliatory expeditions faced inhospitable terrain and extended supply lines. To China's south and east were peoples who, though nominally subordinate in the Chinese cosmology, possessed significant martial traditions and national identities. The most tenacious of them, the Vietnamese, had fiercely resisted Chinese claims of superiority and could claim to have bested China in battle. China was in no position to conquer all of its neighbors. Its population consisted mainly of farmers bound to their ancestral plots. Its Mandarin elite earned their positions not through displays of martial valor, but by way of mastery of the Confucian classics and refined arts such as calligraphy and poetry. Individually, neighboring peoples could pose formidable threats. With any degree of unity, they would be overwhelming. The historian Owen Lattimore wrote, "Barbarian invasion therefore hung over China as a permanent threat. Any barbarian nation that could guard its own rear and flanks against the other barbarians could set out confidently to invade China." China's vaunted centrality and material wealth would turn on itself into an invitation for invasion from all sides. The Great Wall, so prominent in Western iconography of China, was a reflection of this basic vulnerability, though rarely a successful solution to it. Instead, Chinese statesmen relied on a rich array of diplomatic and economic instruments to draw potentially hostile foreigners into relationships the Chinese could manage. The highest aspiration was less to conquer, though China occasionally mounted major military campaigns, than to deter invasion and prevent the formation of barbarian coalitions. Through trade incentives and skillful use of political theater, China coaxed neighboring peoples into observing the norms of Chinese centrality while projecting an image of awesome majesty to deter potential invaders from testing China's strength. Its goal was not to conquer and subjugate the barbarians, but to rule them with a loose rein, Jimi. For those who would not obey, China would exploit divisions among them, famously using barbarians to check barbarians, and, when necessary, using barbarians to attack barbarians. For as a Ming Dynasty official wrote of the potentially threatening tribes on China's northeastern frontier, if the tribes are divided among themselves, they will remain weak, and it will be easy to hold them in subjection. If the tribes are separated, they shun each other and readily obey. We favor one or other of their chieftains and permit them to fight each other. This is a principle of political action which asserts wars between the barbarians are auspicious for China. The goal of this system was essentially defensive, to prevent the formation of coalitions on China's borders. The principles of barbarian management became so ingrained in Chinese official thought that when the European barbarians arrived on China's shores in force in the 19th century, Chinese officials described their challenge with the same phrases used by their dynastic predecessors. They would use barbarians against barbarians until they could be soothed and subdued. And they applied a traditional strategy to answer the initial British attack. They invited other European countries in for the purpose of first stimulating and then manipulating their rivalry. In pursuit of these aims, the Chinese court was remarkably pragmatic about the means it employed. The Chinese bribed the barbarians or used Han demographic superiority to dilute them. When defeated, they submitted to them, as in the beginning of the Yuan and Qing dynasties, as a prelude to Sinicizing them. The Chinese court regularly practiced what in other contexts would be considered appeasement, albeit through an elaborate filter of protocol that allowed the Chinese elites to claim it was an assertion of benevolent superiority.